The bedroom door clicked shut behind Garrett, the sound echoing in the oppressive silence. Mai Lin stood by the window, a small, still figure in a silken red dress embroidered with golden phoenixes. It was her wedding dress, a piece of her old life she'd carried across an ocean, and it felt impossibly foreign against the rough-hewn logs of the Montana ranch house. The fireplace crackled, the smell of pine smoke a thick, unfamiliar scent. Outside, the vast night was a black, star-strewn canvas, but she saw none of it through the blur of her unshed tears. Garrett Shaw, the lonely rancher who was now her husband, remained by the door. He was a broad, weathered man who had buried his first wife 3 years ago, his quiet strength a palpable force in the room. He didn't move closer, didn't speak. He simply waited, having learned that fear was a wild thing you didn't chase, but allowed to approach on its own terms. "I must tell you something," Mai Lin said, her voice a tight whisper, still facing the window. Her English was precise, learned from books, but it trembled now. Before this night. "I'm listening." "I am 20 years old," she began, her shoulders hunching. "I have never been with a man. I do not know how to be what you need. What an American wife should be." Her voice broke on the last words. The terror she felt wasn't just physical, it was the chilling fear of being a disappointment, a fragile, foreign doll in a world that demanded strength. Garrett's jaw tightened. He thought of the weeks of exchanging letters, the careful words that had bridged continents. "Turn around, Mai Lin. Please." She hesitated, then slowly turned to face him. The firelight painted one side of her face in gold, leaving the other in shadow. Tears traced silver paths down her cheeks. Her hands were clenched so tightly in front of her that her knuckles were white. She looked like a beautiful, terrified bird, poised for flight. "Please be gentle," she whispered, the words from the heart of her fear. "It's my first night." Garrett crossed the room in 3 long strides, stopping just inches from her. She had to tilt her head back to meet his gaze, a fact that seemed to emphasize her vulnerability. He saw the stories the town women had likely filled her head with, tales of duty and pain, of wives simply enduring what their husbands demanded. He was about to prove them all wrong. "Do you know why I answered your letter?" he asked quietly. Mai Lin shook her head, a single tear escaping to trace the line of her jaw. "It was what you wrote at the end. You said, 'I have been taught to be quiet and obedient, but my heart is not small. I wish for a life bigger than the one I was given, with a man who values a strong spirit more than a silent tongue.' That's when I knew." "Knew what?" she whispered. "That you were exactly what I needed." He reached up slowly, giving her ample time to pull away, and cupped her face with his large, calloused hands. "My first wife, Clara, she was as gentle as a summer breeze. I loved her with everything I had. When she died, I thought that part of my life was over. I didn't want a replacement for what I lost. I wanted someone new, someone with a quiet fire, strong enough to build a life with, not someone I had to shield from every hard wind." His thumbs brushed away her tears. "You're not a disappointment, Mai Lin. You're the answer to a prayer I didn't know how to speak. But I don't know what to do," she confessed, her voice thick with shame. "And I have heard, it hurts." "No," Garrett's voice was firm, yet gentle. "Not with me." Not ever. He saw the question in her eyes, the one she was too afraid to ask. "I'll make it easy," he said, his voice dropping to a near vow. "You hear me? Whatever happens tonight happens at your pace. We stop whenever you want. If all we do is talk until the sun comes up, then that's what we'll do. I would wait a week, a month, a year, however long you need to trust me." She stared at him as if he'd spoken in a language she'd never heard, a language of impossible kindness. "Why?" "Because kindness is the only thing that truly matters in a marriage bed," he said with a faint smile. "Clara taught me that. And now, I'm going to teach you." He pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her waist and holding her small frame against his solid chest. "This isn't about me taking something from you. It's about us discovering each other. And that takes time." Something in Mai Lin's chest, a wall built of fear and uncertainty, began to crack. He stepped back, taking her hands. I want you. Not in spite of where you come from, but because of it. Because of the courage it took for you to come here. To me. The world may seem too big and frightening, but in this house, you are not too small. You are exactly right. I want to believe you, she whispered, the words catching in her throat. Then let me show you. Garrett led her to the bed, not to lie down, but to sit on the edge of the quilt, side by side. We're going to start slow. So slow you'll think I've lost my mind. He placed his hand over hers where it rested on her lap. Feel my hand. Yes. That's me, promising you're safe. Right here, right now, and for the first time since she'd stepped off the train, Mylin started to believe it. He kept his hand over hers, just breathing with her, in and out, slow and steady. Gradually, her frantic heartbeat began to settle. Clara was terrified on our wedding night, too, Garrett said into the quiet. Her mother had filled her head with the same stories of pain and endurance. So I made her a promise, the same one I'm making you. We won't do anything that hurts. Because if it hurts, we're doing it wrong. Real pain isn't necessary. That's what happens when a man is selfish, or ignorant, or both. But how is it not so? Patience, he answered simply. And listening. Making sure you're truly ready before anything happens. Emma and I took 3 nights before we fully came together. 3 nights of just learning to be close, to trust. And they were the most intimate nights of my life. Tears spilled down Mylin's cheeks again, but this time they were born of relief. So tonight, Garrett proposed, we just get comfortable. Lying together, holding each other. Maybe a kiss, if you feel ready. Nothing more. Intimacy starts with trust, long before anything else. This lonely rancher, who could have demanded his rights, was instead offering her choice and safety. Okay, she whispered. I can try. Garrett stood and turned down the quilt, then removed his boots and vest, but left his shirt and trousers on. Your turn. Get comfortable. Mylin's fingers trembled as she unlaced her small, worn boots. She lay down on the bed stiffly, a rigid line of tension. Garrett lay beside her, not touching, just a warm presence nearby. Breathe, he said softly. She exhaled with a shudder. I'm going to touch your hand, he said. Tell me if it's all right. It is. He took her hand. It was small and delicate in his large, calloused one. They lay like that for long minutes until her breathing evened out. He shifted closer, draping an arm across her waist and resting his head on her shoulder. Her body remained tense, but he simply held her, drawing small, soothing circles on her side with his thumb. My heart is racing, too, he murmured against her shoulder. Mylin turned her head, surprised. Truly? Truly? Because you matter to me. And I'm terrified of doing something that makes you afraid of me. I'm afraid I'll fail you, that I'll be like the men you fear. I'm afraid you'll wake up tomorrow and regret choosing me. His honest vulnerability disarmed her completely. She'd been so consumed by her own fear, she hadn't considered his. I do not regret it, she whispered. Even scared, I do not regret you. A profound shift occurred in the small space between them. Hesitantly, Mylin turned onto her side to face him, wrapping her arms around his middle. He fit against her, a fortress of warmth and safety. Is this okay? She asked. A sound that was half laugh, half sob escaped him. It's perfect. They held each other, and slowly the fear began to melt into something else. Not desire, not yet, but a deep, resonant connection. After a long while, Mylin whispered, Garrett. Yes? May I try to kiss you? A real kiss? He pulled back just enough to see her face, his eyes full of warmth. Are you sure? No. But I want to try. Then yes. But remember, you're in control. She nodded, and, trembling but determined, she leaned in and pressed her lips to his. It was clumsy at first, hesitant and uncertain. But Garrett was patient, guiding without demanding, his lips gentle against hers. And then, something clicked. The kiss deepened, softened, became something real and beautiful. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she whispered, "It was not what I feared." Garrett gave a low chuckle that filled the room with warmth. "Good." She smiled, a true, radiant smile, and kissed him again. And again. She was learning him, learning herself, learning that maybe she wasn't too small or too different after all. Maybe she was exactly enough. They kissed until My Lin's fear had fully transformed into a warm, blossoming curiosity. When they finally paused for breath, she looked at him, her dark eyes shining. Can we try more?" "Not everything. Just more." Garrett searched her face. "You're sure? We don't have to rush." "I know. But I do not want to stop. I feel fear still, but underneath it, something else wants to know what is next." "That's good," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "That's how it should feel." He sat up, bringing her with him. "But promise me one thing. The second something hurts, not just feels new or strange, but actually hurts, you tell me. Promise." "I promise." "Your dress," he said softly. "It's beautiful, but you should be comfortable." He turned, presenting his back to her. "I won't look. You can put on your nightgown." My Lin's fingers fumbled with the intricate clasps. "Garrett," she said, her voice small. "I cannot reach the ones on my back. Do you want help?" A wave of modesty washed over her, but the desire to be comfortable, to trust him in this small way, was stronger. "Yes, please." He turned and his fingers, surprisingly nimble, worked the tiny clasps free. The silk fell away, and she quickly pulled on a simple cotton nightgown. When he turned back, his eyes were full of a reverence that stole her breath. "You're beautiful." "It is only cotton." "I'm not talking about the nightgown." He took her hands. "I'm talking about you. Scared but brave. That's what's beautiful." She didn't know how to respond, so she pulled him close and kissed him again, this time with more confidence. When he pulled back, his voice was rough. "My Lin, I need to know your boundaries before I lose the ability to think. How far do you want to go?" This was the moment. She could stop now, safe and comfortable, or she could trust him. Trust herself. "I want to try," she said, her voice gaining strength. "I want to know if it can be the way you described. Without pain." "All right," he nodded slowly. "But we do this my way. Lie down and close your eyes." She did as he asked, her senses heightening in the darkness behind her lids. She heard the fire, smelled the pine and leather, felt the soft quilt beneath her. Then, she felt his hand on her ankle, warm and solid through the cotton. "I'm going to touch you," he said quietly. "Tell me what feels good." His hand moved slowly up her leg, over her hip, to her ribs. His touch was a map, learning the lines of her body, always slow, always respectful. "Your body is telling me a story," he murmured. "And it's telling me you're ready for more." "I am," she whispered. "Then open your eyes." She did. He was leaning over her, his expression a mixture of profound tenderness and restrained desire. "What happens next might feel intense," he said. "Not painful, but intense. Say the word, and we stop." He leaned down and kissed her, a kiss full of purpose and promise. As his hands and mouth began a slow, patient exploration, My Lin understood. This wasn't something being done to her, it was something they were discovering together. When he whispered against her skin, "You're doing so well, so brave, so beautiful," she believed him. For the first time in her life, she felt worthy of gentleness, worthy of this patient, powerful love. What happened next was tender and careful, and nothing like the brutal act she had been taught to expect. He kept his word, going so slowly, pausing whenever she tensed, murmuring encouragement until her body opened to him like a flower to the sun. There was a moment of discomfort, a stretching sensation that made her gasp, but he stopped instantly. "Breathe," he whispered. "Just breathe through it." She did, and the feeling eased, transformed. Okay, she whispered. I am all right. You're perfect, he murmured, and then they were moving together, a rhythm that belonged only to them. When it was over, and they lay spent and trembling in each other's arms, Mylin finally understood the connection she'd only read about in poetry. It didn't hurt, she whispered, in awe. We made it easy, Garrett corrected gently. Together. She rested her hand over his heart. Thank you. For teaching me my body is not wrong. Your body is perfect, he said, kissing her softly. And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never forget it. 3 months later, Mylin stood in the town's general store. She heard the whispers from the other women, saw the smirks from the men. But she no longer tried to make herself invisible. She stood with a quiet dignity, one hand resting on her belly where a new life was beginning. When she stepped outside, Garrett was waiting with the wagon. He helped her up, not because she needed it, but because he loved to touch her. You all right? He asked, seeing a flicker of something in her expression. They were whispering, she said, but then she smiled, a smile that reached her eyes. And I did not care. Because I know something they don't. What's that? That when two people truly fit, nothing else matters. She took his hand and placed it on her belly. We fit, Garrett. In every way. His eyes widened in understanding, then lit up with a joy so fierce it seemed to brighten the dusty street. He let out a whoop and pulled her from the wagon, kissing her deeply, right there in front of the whole town. He was showing them all that he loved his wife, this remarkable woman from across the world. When he finally let her go, both of them breathless and grinning, she whispered, "Thank you. For everything." Garrett cupped her face, his gaze holding all the love and tenderness that had changed her life. You don't have to thank me for loving you, Mylin. That's the easiest thing I've ever done.